Good morning and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini, and in this edition we go back to the 9 districts that have been heavily devastated by the dam spillage. It's a crisis, and the Ghanaians have mobilized together, are providing relief. Ministers, individual philanthropists, companies have been trooping to the Volta region to assist, particularly to Mepe, which has been completely submerged as a result of the spillage. We're asking, how exactly is the relief being coordinated? And what's the big plan? Individuals and the NPP Nov are talking about resettlement. Is the government saying same? The NPP goes to its crucial votes November 4. Global Info Analytics, that's a survey. It says Dr. Bawumia is in the lead. Very obvious. Everybody knows that. That he has some 43.5% lead. But, there's a but. He needs to do more. His spokespersons say these guys got it wrong because the vice president has in excess of 70 to 80% lead. We'll examine that survey. Now to some of the biggest matters. Galamsey. The AG's department has been touting success in prosecuting several hundreds of people. But it is touting the success in the midst of major devastation. As Erastus Asaridonko tells us in Poisoned for Gold, water bodies polluted to the point we are drinking poison, giving birth to babies who have no form or shape, and destroying everything we plant on the soil. We'll examine the fight. And in the matters of corruption, in the last few weeks, talk about Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo. You remember him? Very significant person in the NPP, and of course, a statesman. Dr. Arthur Kennedy. Frimpong Boateng, celebrated surgeon, and many more have been on a chorus that the corruption is sickening at this stage, and that President Akufo-Addo has been very disappointing. Professor Stephen Adar does not take what is happening lightly at all. How exactly do they come to the conclusions they make about this government superintending the worst regime of corruption? We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. And here is Samson's stake. Justice Atuguba on reforming the judiciary. So I'm just doing a reading of excerpts from a lecture delivered by the blunt-speaking patriot, Justice William Atuguba, at the University of Ghana on the theme, Protecting Our Democracy, the Role of the Judiciary. This was on Wednesday, the 24th of October. He talks about his lived experiences. So on the first topic, he says judicial admissions of executive intrusion of the judiciary. He begins by referring us to 1980, when the CJ, Justice Apalo, in paying tribute to the late Akufo-Addo, CJ, and President of Ghana, Justice Apalo said, quote, "One of the treasured qualities of a judge which he possessed and exhibited became his undoing." He's talking about Justice Akufo-Addo. "He had the courage of his conviction and spoke his mind firmly. In a judicial decision which displeased the then power in the land, he was dismissed in February 1964, having been on the bench for less than 2 years, but merit, like cork, never remains submerged. Just over 2 years afterwards, he was returned to the bench to fill its highest office, Chief Justice. He remained in that office till August 1970, when he was invited to occupy a still higher office, the Presidency of Ghana. On the whole, he occupied high judicial office for just over 5 years, and did so with great distinction." Justice Atugba says, quote, "There are instances in which it may be felt that some members of the judiciary pay allegiance apparently to the executive or otherwise instead of to Ghana. Despite the clear provisions of Article 146, a very knowledgeable Chief Justice of Ghana wrote on 2 occasions to a Justice of the Supreme Court, terminating his tenure as a Supreme Court judge on the ground of ill health, without complying with the said Article 146. We all know that is Justice Pega he's talking about. On being shown the letters by the judge concerned, I strongly exhorted him to reply them, raising the contravention of Article 146. The same Chief Justice indirectly suspended me for 6 months by not empaneling me on any case immediately after I maintained my solo dissent in Chachuchikata versus the Republic, when it came up for review by the Supreme Court. Before I curtailed this issue, the same Chief Justice sidelined me as the then realistic most senior Justice of the Supreme Court, contrary to Article 144(6), who should act as the Chief Justice in his absence. I felt that since the Supreme Court is the custodian of the Constitution, I could not condone its infractions. I therefore assumed the functions of the Chief Justice with clearance from the then most senior Justice, who was then very seriously indisposed and handicapped, until I got to know from him very shortly afterwards that he had become fit enough to act as Chief Justice upon the death of the then incumbent Chief Justice." End quote. He then quotes the legal colossus, Dr. Dateba, retired, as observing the following in his book, and states, quote, this is from the book, "The appointment of judges, particularly of the Supreme Court, as the fulcrum of constitutionalism and the rule of law, has its hiccups. It is the Judicial Council, that recommends suitable lawyers or judges for eventual appointment by the President. Sometimes some judges are recommended by the Judicial Council to the Supreme Court over and above more experienced and senior judges, even though they are not more competent and experienced than their seniors. Often, when there is regime change, some of the sideline senior judges now get recommended for appointment to the Supreme Court through the same Judicial Council. But they then become juniors to their earlier juniors by reason of their later appointment. In practice, however, these later appointed judges often write the unanimous or lead judgments in difficult cases shortly after the appointment to the Supreme Court. Certainly, eyebrows can be raised over such practices. What can be the justification for such things? Nonetheless, depending to some extent on the judicial seizing, the judiciary has deepened constitutionalism in Ghana, notably the nullification of the 31st December holiday celebration funded from public funds, the freedom of choice of independent counsel by state bodies instead of the Attorney General. Despite Article 88(5), where there is conflict of interest, it says, see Amagache versus Attorney General number 1, National Media Commission versus Attorney General. As stated by Professor Dateba in his said book, constitutionalism is, quote, constitutionalism is about having limits to the powers of constitutional bodies and enforcing those limits, end quote. Now he talks about realistic independence of the judiciary. Here is an excerpt. He says, I want to emphasize that there is a vast chasm between independence of the judiciary in theory and its independence in practice. Thus, as explicitly stated by Dr. Dateba in his aforementioned book, quote, independence of the judiciary has two dimensions, the institutional and the personal. Professor Kukwazan loves to talk about this. Personal independence relates to the commitment of individual judges to the judicial values that ensure their impartiality and fairness. I am here referring to values such as eschewing corruption and not allowing ethnic and particularistic considerations to affect judicial determinations. Institutional independence of the judiciary, on the other hand, relates to the constitutional, statutory, and other arrangements put in place to assure the independence of the judiciary. Issues that are customarily dealt with under institutional independence include separation of powers, security of tenure for judges, including appropriate provisions on the appointment processes of judges, the conditions of service of judges, and the process for the removal of superior court judges, financial and administrative autonomy of the judiciary, and measures are what make judiciary independence justifiable. He says, quote, it would be unacceptable to have independent but unaccountable judges. Professor Kukwazan will love that. He concludes that, quote, in view of all this, what matters most is the realistic auditing and restructuring of the judiciary and indeed all other governmental institutions, because just as the cyanide of illegal mining Galamsey has devastated forest lands and poisoned our water bodies, so also has the cyanide of political corruption poisoned our governance institutions. Appointments to the judiciary or any other governance institution must be made by thoroughly independent bodies based on nothing by merit and not on things like protocol, cronyism, ethnicity, and or other improper considerations. The governance institutions, particularly the judiciary, must be realistically insulated against presidential and other political pressures. Service conditions must be reasonably attractive and security of tenure of office must be enshrined. The executive powers of the president and his functionaries must be drastically curtailed. He doesn't understand why the president has 4 nominees to the Judicial Council plus the Attorney General, 5 people who he thinks are policing the system, and therefore people may not be able to do what is right. There must be real separation of parliament from the executive branch. The emphasis should be on good and sincere governance in the interests of the people and not on hollow, over-exaggerated notions of electoral conferment of power on anybody or group of persons. But no meaningful political reforms can be reasonably expected, even under a regime change, without sustaining the political renaissance which has started and is growing well in Ghana. That's Justice William Atuguba in a public lecture on protecting our democracy, the role of the judiciary at the University of Ghana on the 24th of October, 2024. Thank you very much. We will be right back. I'll introduce my guest and we get into the Vex Matters. Welcome back. Joining us, Seji Saji, Deputy Director General, NADMO Technical, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, NPP Nov. I don't know to call him whether the head of a new NADMO in the Volta region. Also, we shall later be joined by Suleiman Ibrahima, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa, Dr. John Osai Kwapong. Not too excited about his mother's party and the things happening in it. Democracy and Development Fellow, CDD Ghana. Nana Komia is here in the studio. He is member New Patriotic Party Communications. Also speaks for the Dr. Bawumia campaign. Godwin Eduji Tameklo is legal and communications team member, National Democratic Congress. Of course, he is in charge of legal affairs of the NDC. Gentlemen, good morning to all of you and welcome to Newsfile this morning.
Good morning, Samson. Good morning to you.
So let's go straight to Seji Saji, Deputy Director General, NADMO. We spoke to you about the same time last week as we spoke about the over 30,000 people who had been displaced and needing relief and how you were coordinating the relief to those who have been affected. This morning, what can you tell us? At this point, let's deal with some figures. What is the total number of people who have been affected? And we will move on further to check your relief coordination efforts, how really coordinated, well coordinated it is. Hello, Mr. Saji. Did we lose Saji? Okay. Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa is MP for North Tongue. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Okay, so just a few difficulties. We should connect with them and get to you to give you some information. But of course, Ghanaians ought to be applauded for the manner in which they have gone to the aid of the affected. Let me begin. Saji, thank you very much for joining us, sir. Hello, Saji. So on your screens, we are showing you some of the people who went to make donations, institutions. The education minister was there with his team. The finance minister was there with the finance ministry team as in individuals making contributions for that place. The sanitation minister also, correct? And then we had several, Magdan, Tornado, Capitano, El Capitano, Tornado, and the Wembley sports people. Okay, so let's try again. Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, thank you very much for making time to join us.
Thank you very much, Samson.
Right. So earlier I was saying I don't know how to describe you now, whether as an MP or rather a relief coordinator. And we are showing pictures actually from your page where you have constantly updated all Ghanaians about the people who are coming and the donations they are making and how you feel. This is you and the finance minister and how you feel about it. And the next big steps that you want to happen. So give us a brief. How has the week been since we spoke to you last week?
Well, thank you very much, Samson, and good morning to you, the panel, and to all your distinguished listeners. It's been a very hectic week, but it has also been an inspiring week. It's been a week where many Ghanaians have been responding. When we spoke last week, there were just about 18 organizations and individuals who had come in to support us. As I speak to you, the updated list I hold in my hands here, 55.
Wow.
55 organizations. And honestly, I have really been overwhelmed by the outpouring of compassion, of kindness. Ghanaians are very, very good people, I must emphasize. Very, very good people. You have volunteers. Nooks has been here with students who say they want to take time off and just come and teach our children under trees. Since these
You were actually asking for volunteers for your caravan.
Yes, yes, and the response has been overwhelming. Nooks, the All Africa Students Union, and the Town Students Association in the universities responded, and they are here organizing free classes for the kids. Because remember that as long as these camps remain in these 21 schools, there can be no education. The children don't have access to their classroom, and they are losing time because their peers are learning across the country, and they are going to be writing the same BC. They'll be writing the same WASI. So that has been my headache, really.
So presently, there is absolutely no option than to use the 21, classrooms or plus churches, so that there's the pupils, the students will have the opportunity of an environment to learn?
That is a sad reality. And earlier in the week, the Minister of Education was here, and he saw things for himself. In my remarks, I emphasized this point that alternative housing really is critical at this point. We need to find alternative houses so we can relocate the displaced people. The numbers have gone up a bit. I think Northtown is hitting 13,000 now in terms of the displaced people, according to the latest NADMO data. So these are huge numbers. And even though our chiefs have donated land, and I must commend the chiefs, they say that anybody who is willing to come and put up housing here does not have to pay for the land, not even a knocking fee. You don't have to present drinks, nothing. Just come and take over the land and start. And I must commend the First Sky Group. We are working very, very fast. And then I must also commend Pastor Martin, who has promised that his church will also take up a housing unit. Mr. Ibrahim Mahama has also promised that he will also take up a few housing units. And he's already sent his engineers here to do a recce and to assess the land. This morning, he sent bulldozers here to start preparing the land for houses to be constructed. And we want to thank him very much. We are eternally in his debt. I must also add that the relocation discussion must go beyond a few philanthropies, because the numbers are huge, and government will have to really put together an allocation for this. And that is why when the finance minister came yesterday, whilst commending him for his visit, I emphasized 2 points. That in the 2024 budget he will be presenting to Parliament in a few days, I want to see 2 things. 1, resettlement allocation in the budget, and 2, compensation allocation in the budget, because it is urgent. Apart from the fact that schooling has been affected, the sanitary conditions are not the best. Classrooms are not created for residential accommodation. There are no showers, there are no toilets, there are no beds, and so it's just makeshift structures. People are crammed, there's congestion, and doctors are already saying that my people are now presenting with all kinds of respiratory diseases and skin infections from heat rash and all of that. So it's not humane. No human being deserves to be living in a classroom under these conditions. And even though this week Red Cross, and I must commend Red Cross, they brought us 24 tents to help ease the congestion. The congestion is real, and it still remains. And we don't have even enough portable toilets in these camps. So these are not conditions anybody should live in. And so it is important that government really considers an allocation, even though at our level, private initiative is going on to see how many people we can resettle. But I'm glad that the finance minister was here with
Thank you.
from the finance ministry.
let's look at it this way. Two very important, critical matters that have to be explained. In terms of the big plan, as in the resettlement that you are pushing for your people, especially Mepe, which is completely gone, as we understand.
Yeah.
First, tell us about that. Is it just about the Sky Group and Prophet Amwating promising to help in that direction as well, and then Ibrahim Mahama also promising to help? They've all been there and donated so much to assist you. Is it just them, or there is a plan so that this doesn't become haphazard?
So, to be honest with you, Samson, I wish I could tell you that there is a plan which has been confirmed to us by the central government. There is none. So it's just private initiatives. My chiefs and I looking at land, large tracts of land, telling everybody to stay away from those lands and demarcating those lands, and we showing it to prospective people who want to support us to resettle these displaced people. So we keep pushing government to tell us what the plan is. And I told the finance minister yesterday in my remarks when he visited us that we want to see an allocation in the budget for that, and that will let us know that government has a plan. But for now, it is at the level of just private initiative, the chiefs donating land, and me going out there to lobby and appeal to well-wishers to come in and help us. But that's not a sustainable. I do concede that we may get some housing units, but in terms of looking at the numbers, that will not be adequate. And remember that the appeal my chiefs too made to the president when he visited us about Saglemi housing, if it could be considered so that our people will relocate, will have more decent, humane conditions, and then the schools will be free for academic work to resume. We are still waiting for a response from government in that regard. So we really don't have a plan from government on resettlement, and I think that it is really sad.
About groups like the Red Cross Society that gave you some 24 tents that you are distributing among the 21 displaced camps. Is it not possible to focus on getting more tents so that the education of the children can take place?
You see, the challenge with these tents is that these tents are being mounted right in the schools. So it still disrupts the academic work. It's not conducive unless we prepare land elsewhere. And this is land that we want to use for more permanent housing, the land that we have allocated. Remember that we don't have a lot of land to spare these days. A lot of the land is underwater, and so the few we have, we think that it's we are better off using it for more permanent, decent housing, so that we can relocate the people. So these tents are in schools, so it doesn't really address the issue. I mean, children will be in class learning, and people are in tents all around, the precincts of the schools. Some are doing their chores, cooking, the smoke, the aroma, the noise activities. People are coming to donate. People are coming to share items, the noise. That's not a conducive environment for academic work. So it's really not an option, ideally. And that's why we believe that the most appropriate thing to do, and to do it urgently, is to have a government-announced initiative for reconstruction, and it has to be comprehensive. Houses, clinics, because a lot of the chief compounds, a lot of the hospitals are gone. Really, technically speaking, it's only Bator Catholic Hospital surviving now. So we need to look at a resettlement plan, proper resettlement plan. And earlier this week, the Ghana Institute of Engineers, Architects, Planners were here, and they agree with us that the only sustainable path forward is to have a resettlement plan and move the displaced people into those permanent accommodation.
Issue has to do with what I raised first. The relief, it's coming in droves. Almost all media houses and the significant media houses like conglomerates like multimedia are all mobilizing and bringing them towards the region. How is this coordinated?
Yes, and I must commend the media. You guys have been phenomenal, and we really appreciate it. In Northton, we have set up a joint committee, and I am in that committee. The DC is in the committee. The Deputy Director General of NADMO has been asked to chair the committee so that it's not seen as a partisan effort because he is a technical person. So he chairs the committee. We have reps from the chiefs. So it's a very coordinated effort, and we disclose to each other what is coming in. This morning we have a mega distribution program, which is what I had to take a break from to talk to you. And today we are in the Mafia traditional area. We are beginning with households. You know, many people think all the displaced people are in the 21 camps. It's just about 60% who are in the displaced camps. The rest are in households touching with those whose buildings survived. So today we want to focus on those people in the various homes. So we're focusing on the households, and we've packaged the relief items that have come in. Okay. We have them in relief boxes. So everybody gets some rice, some oil, some canned fish, a drink, biscuit, and then maize. My people really like maize. To
be frank with you, to be frank with you, Samuel, I was looking, for example, at say Akwaina Stevia Kwanzaa bringing those bags of maize.
Yes, from Ibrahim farm. Yes.
Ibrahim Mohammed's trucks. You call them trailers, right?
Yes.
Packed with all those items. Where are you going to keep them? That's actually what I'm thinking about. Where are you keeping them? Magdan, Foundation, all that they brought in trailers. Where are you going to keep them?
Yes, so we've identified warehouses. Remember that the numbers are huge. So we immediately do sharing because we like the donors to see that the items are going to the people. So when they come in, we have a program. We invite people who are outstanding to be served. We invite them to the presentation ceremony. So immediately, the first batch of sharing takes place in their presence. It goes to their victims. And then we have identified 4 warehouses. We have 4 big warehouses. And I must thank a Chinese construction firm here in the constituency who have donated their warehouse to us to use for this period. We have another warehouse in the assembly. We have a third one at the Best Care Hotel. They've also donated theirs very generously. Then the 4th one is I have had to convert. You know, I had this big furniture and footwear bank that I provide furniture and footwear to deprived children throughout the year. We've had to empty it of the shoes, remove the shoes and furniture, and we are using that as a 4th warehouse. So we still do have some space for more donations to come in. So something I don't want you to think that we are so overwhelmed and we lack space in Northton. We do. And remember that this is a long-haul operation. They are still in the camps. They are going to be there for a long time. Over 500 houses, according to NADMO, have been
Even destroyed. When you do, we pray and hope that you do get overwhelmed. And when you do get overwhelmed, we will ensure that you are double overwhelmed because it is needed. Thank you very much, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, the MP for Northton. And let's go to Seji Saji, Deputy Director, NADMO. Yes, earlier my question to you was, in terms of the numbers, now, are you setting of the specific numbers of displaced people that you are dealing with in these 21 camps?
Samson, and good morning to you and your cherished listeners, and to the other panelists as well. Just to quickly situate the discussion properly, we are coordinating 8 districts. There seems to be a lot of focus of Northton, understandably, because, it is the worst hit. But we are dealing with 29,133 people as our final figure we put out yesterday as affected persons in all.
What's the figure again?
39,133.
Okay, so that's where we are now. 39,000,
Yes,
almost 40,000.
Almost 40,000 in all these 8 districts that we have recorded affected persons. Yes, 1/3 of that number is in North Tongue alone, and the single most the community that has the highest number is Nefe, understandably. But just for the whole country to understand that this relief effort or response effort is targeted at all 8 districts so that nobody will be left out.
I'm sure that's been clear. Even Okujeto, when he speaks to the 12 camps, not his constituency alone. So then to the next question.
Just a clarity on that.
Yeah.
The 12 camps and the 21 camps is mentioning is specific to North Tongue alone. There are 4 in Central Tongue, there are 3 in Ada, and there's another 3 in Shai Usuduku. So there are currently 4 districts that have safe havens with people we are attending to.
So we have more than 21 camps.
Exactly. What he's talking about is specific to North Tongue.
So the total number of camps will be how many?
We have 21 in North Tongue. We have 4 in Central Tongue, and we have 3 in Ada and 3 in Shai Usuduku.
Okay. So how are you coordinating the relief that is coming from all the place? How are you coordinating that?
So what we are doing is that we have tried to pre-position relief in at least 4 of the districts. We have relief in North Tongue actually holding the highest. We have relief in Central Tongue that is at Didomi. And we have relief in South Tongue, which is Sogakofe. And we have some relief in Adang. So what we do is that we coordinate the movement or the deployment of this relief across all the 8 districts. Because when the donations are coming in, sometimes we even advise those bringing the donation that, well, send it to this place so that to be closer to the other districts. So we are holding items in these 4 centers.
All right. Did I hear you say 8 districts? We have been talking about 9 instead of 8, correct?
Yes. Actually, there is in the emergency preparedness plan of the VRA, downstream the Volta Dam is 9 districts. But when the spillage started up to now, we have only recorded affected persons in 8 districts. 2 in Greater Accra, that is Shai Usuduku and Ada East. 2 in Eastern Region, that is Sujaman and Lower Manya. And 4 in the Volta region, that is North Tongue, Central Tongue, South Tongue, and Agnoka districts. The 9th district is Adan West, which is the Sege side. We have not recorded any displaced person yet. That is why I keep referring to 8 districts.
All right. Okay, that's understood. That's understood. So there is some talk about, the big plan, the need for resettlement, and perhaps compensation also. So let's talk about resettlement. Is it part of what you at NADMO are thinking about, or you working together with the ministerial committee?
Thank you. We have 4 phases of disaster management. It certainly starts with mitigation, preparedness. We do response, and we do recovery. We are just about finishing with response and dovetailing into recovery. And recovery is normally short-term into the medium term. And mitigation would then start from there, which will be the medium term into long term. And that is where the issue of resettlement comes in. Relocation will form part of the recovery process because certainly some houses have gone down.
Right.
Most of the houses that were made with clay are down. Even the ones that are not made with clay, that were completely inundated, the immediate actions we are looking at quickly is to do a quick assessment of, the structural integrity of those structures. We are looking at decontamination because you are aware that all the public latrines, sanitary, everything was washed into that water. Then we are looking at fumigation as well. When all this is done, especially the immediate plan of getting our schools to reopen, which the Minister of Education came to do a first assessment of, they are coming back after a week to give us a solution as to how the schools will proceed, because it is not only the safe havens that have been affected. Some schools have been completely submerged and they cannot be used again. So there are two categories. Some schools are gone. Even the ones are left, we are using them as camps.
All right. So
completely, there will not be education activities in those particular areas. And that is why the minister, as part of the interministerial committee, came down to have a first-hand knowledge, strategizing with his district directors of education and regional directors of education. They are coming back to start something.
How closely are you working with the MP for Norton, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, who, for very obvious reasons, appears to, do his things in such a way that he attracts a lot of attention to his area?
Well, that's we are actually working very. I managed to work with the traditional council, work with the MP, work with all the stakeholders, and that was the committee he referred to. This committee was put together about a week ago. I had a meeting with them, and I painted the picture, the general picture to them. Government has brought in a lot of items. People have donated items to traditional councils. People have donated items to MPs, to MPs. I mean, in this case, the MPs of all those areas. So there is a need for us to have a coordinated effort in trying to administer this relief. If not, we'll be duplicating our efforts, and maybe even doing that, we might leave out some people. So it is important that we all come together and do this, and that is how the committee was put together. In the other districts, a similar thing is working out, but it is through the disaster management committee. I would urge the media, especially your outfit, to try and get some duty bearers in all those districts too as well, and give them the publicity as you have done for North Town, and at least listen to their story as well. Because even though we have almost 13,000 people in North Town affected, we have over 9,000 people affected in Central Town. In Adan, we are talking about 5,000 plus. In South Town, we are talking about over 4,000.
All right.
In Chaiwo Sudoku, 3,000.
Thank you very much, Saji Saji, who is Deputy Director Technical of NADMO. I'll just take a brief comment from the two of you, and then we move on. Just a minute or two each. Nana Kumia. So he's talking about the need for coordination. There are certain people, regardless what you do, they have a certain leadership style. And don't you think they need to be reaching out a lot more to the particular MP who appears to manage his affairs in such a way that a lot of attention is going through to him, to the people generally?
Well, good morning, Samson, my good brother, Edudi. Yes, Samuel Okudzeto, I'm sure, is the reference person that you are alluding to in terms of his visibility and his proactivity in the relief efforts of his people. And so he's attracting a lot of attention, and these people are attracting a lot of relief items because of the activism of the Member of Parliament, Samuel Okudzeto. But if you heard him, he also was lamenting about the need for coordination. And
he shouldn't be lamenting, right?
No, I'm coming to it. And our brother from NADMO is also just lamenting about the need for coordination. So clearly what is happening is that the Kujeto Ablakwa is filling a gap. There's a gap in coordination. And so in that gap, he seems to be filling it, which is credit to him.
Or maybe they came to the game a bit late.
And you see, there are about 3 or 4 constituencies. I'm sure if I ask you who the other members of parliament are in those
we have spoken to Abla Gomashi, and then the 2 others, I haven't heard from them, but I've seen our correspondent go to the various places.
So that is my point, that
Yes.
you can't even remember.
That's true.
So it shows you that the activism of Samuel Kujeto has overshadowed all the other personalities, and also attracting a lot of attention to his constituency. And is also filling a gap because there doesn't seem to be any coordination. And instructively, even the NADMO bosses are also lamenting about coordination. And coordination is important. No matter the activism of Samuel Kujeto and some of the other people, they cannot serve as central coordinating points.
Right.
There has to be a central coordinating point that will bring everything together. I mean, we talked about even the distribution of the relief items. There has to be some equity.
That's right.
And if there's no central coordination, equity is going to be lost. People would get 4 or 5 times than other people. Other people may not get anything at all, depending on the activism or the preference of whichever the donor is, or the activism of Samuel Kujeto and so on. So there has to be coordination.
Right.
And when there's coordination, it helps the plight of the people. For example, we understand that some shelters are being constructed.
Yes, the
So
Sky Group, and then we hear that this prophet Amwatin is also promising, as well as engineers and planners Ibrahim Mahama, and all of them went to the Mepe area.
So there has to be coordination in even the provision of shelters, that they satisfy the planning regulation of the area and so on. Land use of the area, the chiefs may donate the land, but you need a central coordination. And there has to be relocation, I'm sure, at some point, the severely affected people. So there has to be coordination. And that, so far, has been missing. So there seems to be no medium-term plan that this is what is going to happen with the relief items, this is what is going to happen with provision of health, sanitation, education, many children.
There's a ministerial team, about 12 or so or more. It should be easy for them to bring everybody to the one place.
We hope that they are getting their act together. But as we speak now, every major actor in the place is complaining about coordination, including even NADMO. So I hope that the ministerial team will get its act together.
All right.
And the communication, you remember the COVID-style communication of
That's
the
right.
government, which was led by the president.
Yeah.
And I think there were monthly updates. It has to be duplicated.
The Information Ministry has started something. They say they will do maybe twice a week. So they are giving
Fantastic.
updates.
Fantastic. So that the rest of the country would
And I see the
carry
Information
along.
Ministry has also generated an emergency, contact line. To be frank with you, and let me come to Eduji, I was expecting that at the very start, we'll see NADMO, giving us short codes to reach to and all of those things, rather than have the Ministry of Information come in later and do all of this.
I have actually, I have actually seen a NADMO short code, but it all comes to the communication. Even you don't.
The projection.
But there's a NADMO short code. So even what is being done is not being communicated in a way that will carry all of us along.
Right.
So it's crucial that as we go forward, NADMO, the interministerial committee, the various members of parliament. Remember the misunderstanding over the withdrawal of some
Yes, military.
there was total misunderstanding. and so before we realized.
They said they were taking them elsewhere because they felt that Okudjeto's constituency, things were improving, so they were going elsewhere.
But if there's coordination.
But he disagreed, and I think they changed, revised the plan.
Well, but the initial information was that they were being withdrawn. What happened is they were being reassigned, but the initial communication was that they were being withdrawn.
Right.
So
the NADMO contacts, if you still want to
important.
get to them, and you should be interested in getting to them. Remember last week they gave us these contacts. You can use them, 0291 103 257. That's 029 1103 257 or 029 1103 251. Yes, Sediji, briefly.
Samson, my brief intervention as far as this matter is concerned is one, a call for a bipartisan parliamentary probe. I strongly believe that we need to ensure that we avoid this happening again. And we have the capacity to ensure it doesn't happen again. Now, on the issue of coordination, what is clear is that if there is a gap, it further fortifies the reason why the call for declaring a state of emergency is important. Because you see, you have a crisis that effectively has affected Volta region, Oti region, Eastern region, Greater Accra, Savannah, and the Bono regions. I mean, I don't remember the last time, in the last 10 years, maybe beyond COVID, that we have had a national, emergency covering this number of regions. So it becomes necessary that we need to have a state of emergency in place. And once you have a state of emergency declared by the president, it provides centrality relative to coordination. And that, for me, is what is lacking. And in terms of the affected communities, I mean, it's obvious that Mepe is the epicenter because that's obviously where the Volta River basically meanders back towards Sugakope and these areas. And because it's also low-lying, it is not surprising that that is the worst hit. But you can see the work of MPs, Kobiwoyome in South Tong, you have Alex Wotoji in Central Tong, you have Jifa Ablagomashi, and the MPs for Keta, Gakwe, and then the MP for Anglon. But if you go to the Oti region, there's 6 constituencies in Oti, in Kwanta North, in Kwanta South, Biakuye, you have Krachi East, Krachi West, Krachi Nchumnu. All these areas have equally been affected. If you go to Germany, that's South Dine, all those areas have equally been affected. So once you have a state of emergency in place, you don't even have situations where all items are going to, say, Mepe, and then distribution possibly may become an issue. Relative to coordination, you'll notice that in the specific case of North Tong, at least there's what appeared to be a locally structured distribution network comprising NDC, NPP, and the traditional authority, particularly the Mepe Development Association. They have been so far so good in ensuring that everything is done properly.
Right.
Now, the danger is that after this situation, remember, there will be an issue of resettlement. How are we going to manage it? The health crisis that may come, cholera, among other things, because once it involves water, these matters will come up. So we are not done yet, and that is where I think the call for declaring a state of emergency is even more profound under the circumstance.
All right, thank you very much. So we will take a quick break. When we return, we will quickly check at the NPP. Next week, this time, they would be busy determining who becomes the flag bearer of the NPP, even though the watchers and the punditocrats will say that it is known, it's a done deal, except that you must go through the ritual. We'll be right back.
And then those who said they were undecided. This number has been moving up and down from when Alan withdrew from the race, and then that number has been going up and up slightly. Now, what we have realized is that those who are not disclosing, even though they've made up their mind, they are mostly anti-establishment candidates.
Okay. Oh. Okay. Those who have said they will not disclose.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it is very important to point out that From what we understand from the numbers, it is highly unlikely the race will go into runoff because of the numbers these two are registering.
They're undecided.
No, these two. If these guys were doing 5%, that they could pull the two candidates backwards.
Okay.
Now they are doing less than 1% or thereabouts. It's highly unlikely they will push the race into runoff.
So we are looking at someone getting a 50%
plus one. Yes. And anybody of them
32%.
Yes.
Bawumia needs about 9% of this vote. 9%
to get 50%. Yes.
Exactly, to get 50% plus one. Kennedy, on the other hand,
needs quite a lot.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you still believe that with this huge number here, there will not be any runoff?
No.
I cannot fault them if they want to do research. But what I want us also to be guided is that this is a delegates election. This is about 200,000 delegates. Let me know, let's say if you take Zabzugu constituency, we interviewed and polled, let's say 50 or 100. You take Ayawaso West Wogo, you take Evaluate Ajomorojira, or you take these constituencies, then we know the methodology, the sample size that you use. But if you just come to tell me that you interviewed people, you polled them based on which geographical location that they were located, and you are not giving me the constituency breakdown, it will be difficult for me to analyze. We have done extensive polling. We have done research. We know where our strength, our weaknesses, and going into these final days. But I can tell you that the Bawumia camp is claiming an almost 80% victory next week, Saturday. And I'm very confident about that. Any polling that puts Dr. Bawumia below 75% becomes an accident in history.
Secretary, all of us are going to follow the dictates as indicated by the Electoral Commission and the Ghana Police Service. On 26th of August, the respective institutions, the Ghana Police Service and the Electoral Commission, did a woman's job. And we are looking forward to even better what happened on August 26th. I must admit that there were certain bit of infractions on 26th of August. And we are hoping that come November 4th, these things will not happen. So Mr. IGP and your team, we have absolute support of the party. On that day, look at it without fear or favor and act and do your work as you professionally always do. You have our full support of the party and the Electoral Commission likewise. Thank you very much, and we are wishing for successful work.
Right. So, how is it going to go? Before I was going to go to the professor, and who likes to, use the Afrobarometer most of the times, and who is not excited about what is happening in his mother's party, Dr. John Osai Kwapong, Democracy and Development Fellow, CDD Ghana. But I think he may himself want to hear from Nana Kumia before he speaks. So, Nana, the poll by Global Info Analytics is that Bawumia is leading. He dominates more, particularly in the northern region, with over 70% support. And they say Ken has some central, western, and voter votes. Bawumia's support has increased over time from 34.8% in June to 43.5% now. And also that Ken has grown his support from 12.5 to 23.5. You guys are not taking kindly this report. Why?
Samson, if you are experienced in politics, you take polling as it is. If the polling says that you are doing well, it should encourage you to do better.
They say they polled 4,311 people.
If the polling says you are not doing well, it should encourage you to do even better. And that really should be the attitude of a seasoned politician to polling. Whatever the results of the polling is, it should encourage you. If the polls, somebody does polls and say you are winning, it means that you are the person to beat. So you have to run faster to make sure nobody beats you. If the polls say you are not winning, it means you have to run faster so you can overtake the person who's winning. So really, the attitude to polling shouldn't be hostile.
Their conclusion, however, is that Bawumia will win by 65.3% of the national delegate votes compared to 34.2% for Ken.
So these polls that we are discussing, is it by something analytics?
Global Info
Yes.
Analytics.
It says that Bawumia would win. There are some undecided voters.
Yes.
But even from the results of this polling itself, if you added all the undecided people, undecided voters to Kennedy Agyapong's, Bawumia will still win. And if you added them to Bawumia's, it's even wider. So this poll is saying that Bawumia would win. The point of departure is that, despite what I have said, the Bawumia team, we also do our own polling. And our polling shows us that we will do much, 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 much better than what this data analytics is saying. It doesn't mean that the data analytics should be poo-pooed. It says that we are winning anyway. So really, it's not saying anything different from what our own polling is telling us. It's just saying that we will win by a smaller...
It also says that if undecided voters decided to go for Ken, it will be difficult for you. They said, they call it a hypothetical runoff, but they don't believe that there will be a runoff.
But they should be using their own polls and not what they believe. They should be using their own polls. No, but what is the numbers of the undecided?
18 or so. 18.
18.
Or so, yeah.
And if you added 18 to Ken's, 23, what do you get? If you added all the 18 to Ken, they gave Ken, was it 23?
That's it, yeah, 23.5.
23. So if you, and the undecided, where's the undecided?
18.3.
If you added all the undecided, 18 to 23, what do you get?
41 points. Is it 8? Yeah.
So you still don't beat Bawumia by this polling. If you added all the undecided to Kennedy Agyapong's, Bawumia will still be ahead.
It's first past the post.
And you are not going to get all the 18 going for Ken.
Your election is first past the post. You don't need
50%
plus one.
50 plus 1. Yeah.
So that's where they seem to suggest that, but they still say it's hypothetical.
Because you are not going to get all the 18
right
going for. I mean, it's not.
Right.
It's not. Yeah. So even this poll show that Bawumia is ahead. It's just that our own polling, which we also believe in, show us that we would win, but the margins will be different. So we'll take it at face value. It says that our margin will be smaller. It's going to encourage us to work much harder in the last 1 week and intensify our efforts. So whatever the polling says, even if it said to us that we will not win, it will encourage us to work much harder to win. So we are cool.
Okay.
We are cool.
Somebody who supports your team, is it Opariansa?
Yeah.
He's been very angry that there is a plot to intimidate people who want to vote for Bawumia or other candidates apart from Ken in a particular region. And he's been running amok.
Well, I believe that the surprise of the campaign is that we have not had a lot more sentiments being expressed, like Honorable Opariansa, that the Bawumia camp has been quite restrained because Bawumia himself wants his team to focus on the message, not on the message of opponents, not on the accusations of opponents, no matter how damaging the accusations may be. He wants us to focus on the message to the delegates.
Sort of reflect his demeanor.
Yes. But otherwise, you are going to have a lot more of the reaction that Opariansa had done. And in Opariansa's case, he himself had been directly accused. You remember an accusation was made that he went to take some money or he went to demand some money and so on. And if he believes that these accusations are baseless, it would be difficult to restrain him. And then this business about the threats. We've all seen the threats. We've all seen footage of my brother Kennedy telling people that if they didn't vote one way or the other, they were going to face repercussions, which is quite uncalled for, because that amounts to threats. And in many of these
but his solution, Oparanya says solution is rather going to bring trouble. Because he says he's also going to march there with his team. You guys are not cowards. If he thinks he's a man, whatever. I mean, that's not how to go about it.
So what you're saying is that two wrongs don't make a right.
Correct.
Point taken.
All right. Yes, Ediji, what do you say about the campaign so far? And now Bawumia says there's been, is it one day, one lie, and he has been responding to, and people are saying, well, it looks like he's beginning to feel that he cannot take the campaign, lightly.
I mean, it's quite ironical that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has an issue with lies in politics. Quite ironical. But you see, for me, what is significant in all of this conversation is that the whole Bawumia candidature, of which Nana Komia had been pulled from retirement to, as it were, project, is one that basically, for a third term for Mr. Akufo-Addo, invariably. The Bawumia candidature, as far as Ghana politics is concerned, again, I believe, is just an experiment by Mr. Akufo-Addo, possibly to test the sanity of Ghanaians. And where I think we should be looking at, that even if you look at the polling numbers of the 400, what it means is that a typical NPP person, right, 18% of them cannot confidently say they prefer Bawumia, even to lead the NPP. 18% out of that 4,000. And for me, that's significant. Now, if even within the creme de la creme of NPP, if you add Ken, Adanimo, the Agric Minister, Owusu, if you put all of them together, almost about 60-something% out of the 100, that's 43, are for Bawumia. So we are talking about more than 50% of the NPP members saying that they don't like him. And that, for me, is a vote of no confidence. It's a vote of no confidence. Because
but the party says that this is the candidate that you guys fear the most in the NDC. Because it does look like if he's presented, then it's not going to be good for you in the elections.
First of all, Bawumia, like we say, is a fruit of the poisonous tree that has befallen Ghanaians today as we speak. So what is it about Bawumia that we should be scared of? I personally, if you ask me of a personal opinion, I fear the kind of politics because it's unconventional. You cannot tell what you do next. And so from a political strategic point of view, I fear his candidature. And for Bawumia, that's a damaged good. Look, if I go to, for instance, a typical Muslim community, and he says represents them, I'll say, before he became vice president, he said, look, he needed to be there to represent the interests of Muslims. Correct. Today, as we speak, a Muslim who is desirous of performing one of the 5 pillars of Islam need to cough about 75,000 Ghana cedis. It was 11,000 when he became vice. And the reason is because of the depreciation of the city, directly linked to his work as the chairman of the economic management team. So how in God's name is this candidature a threat to us? But you see, as politicians, we are not complacent. We do not want to underestimate any of the candidates, even though we believe that broadly, the NPP administration, quite unfortunately, has been abysmal. They have not demonstrated the capacity to develop this country. And you see, when we say this, the evidence is driven by data. We are talking about an administration that took over at a time when we have a debt to GDP ratio of 56%. Today, the report shows that by close of this year, we'll be doing 98%. How did we get here? I'm sure the middle class today watching us are asking, never was there that contemplation that we'll be doing a domestic debt exchange program, which had basically wiped out middle class income.
Does that, granted, assuming that what you're saying is what it is, that's how people are thinking about the elections, does that translate to automatic consideration of the NDC as an alternative?
I mean, you see, for me, it is not an issue of automatic whatever. We are not sitting at home saying because NPP had failed, we want to win on our own strength.
Okay.
And that is why we have put in place the structures required to, as it were, prosecute a formidable focused campaign as far as the 2024 election is concerned. We are not going to say, okay, because NPP had been so abysmal, we are going to sit home. No.
All right.
We are putting everything in place to do what is needed.
All right, let's go.
But, just 30 seconds. I need to make this point absolutely clear that Akufo-Addo's experiment, the candidature of Dr. Muhammadu Bawumia, is a simple third term misadventure by Mr. Akufo-Addo.
Thank you, but the president has said that he does not have any.
He had put in place enough government infrastructure.
That's the president. The president has
the Bawumia candidature.
Please allow me to also say that the president, because I need to put the facts out, the president has said that he does not support any of the candidates. Thank you. Now, Doc, thank you very much for making time to join us this morning. What do you make of the Global Info Analytics 4,311 people that they polled on what should happen by this time next week?
Yeah, thank you, Samson. Good morning, and good morning to the other guests on the show. So I was actually looking at how the question is framed specifically. And it says, if you were a delegate at the NPP presidential primary. So, I mean, Global Info Analytics is doing quite a good job in this area of polling. I think it's an area that is really needed, in our politics, in our elections. Yes, individuals sometimes do have issues with polling, but I think as one of the rituals of politics, I find polling very helpful because you get to test what I call the pulse of the nation. The one thing that I keep asking sometimes though is whether being able to poll the delegates themselves, I think would be a much stronger signal of what is going to happen. But I have also regularly said that I will be very surprised if Dr. Bawumia doesn't win the flag bearer. And as Nana Kumia was saying, their internal polling also shows that he's doing much better. And I suspect that for them, they are able to actually poll the delegates who will be casting the vote on November 4th. But when all is said and done, I have regularly said that it would come as a big surprise to me if Dr. Bawumia doesn't win the NPP flag bearership in this primary come next weekend.
The criticism, though, is that whilst he will win, he's not winning with sort of natural votes, but people who are being whipped into supporting him to as it were, seek to continue Akufo-Addo's legacy and protect it. What's your thinking?
But one thing you cannot also take from, when the NPP primaries started, right? I say that the one thing you cannot also take from Dr. Bawumia is the approach that he has taken to try and win the flag bearership. I call him the establishment's candidate, but even then, you see him engaging in classic retail politics. He's not taking anything for granted. I mean, if you follow his campaign, it's like I'm winning the hearts and minds of every delegate, one delegate at a time. Yes, it's an internal contest, an internal contest sometimes brings out very fierce competition. I mean, if you look at the kind of campaign that the Honorable Kennedy Japong is running, it's quite a fierce challenge that he's putting up against the Vice President. But even though the winds, of the primary appears to be blowing in the direction of the Vice President, he's also not taking it for granted. And so, sure, not everybody in the party would, and as we've seen the primaries play out, not everybody in the party would throw their weight behind him for whatever reason. They may prefer another one of the internal candidates. But again, when all is said and done, for me, it is more the post-primary that would be the biggest challenge for the party and for Dr. Bawumia when he went to the primary, right? Because when all is said and done, you still want to keep the party together, no matter how fierce the intra-party competition was, and then how you prosecute the general election.
Okay, so on a lighter note and mixed with seriousness, this is your mother's party. Who is your money on? Who among the four should the NPP be presenting to Ghanaians as worthy of being considered to be a president?
Samson, whoever my mother's party's people choose, right? The biggest challenge that they are going to face is how they reconcile the 2016 election narrative and how things have turned out over the last 7 years. Okay. Yes, they may have explanations and reasons as to why they believe the country is in the state in which it is. But fundamentally, whoever they present has to be able to reconcile the 2016 narrative with the reality that Ghanaians have experienced. And I think that's going to be the biggest headache, for the party, regardless of who they choose. I agree with Lawyer Judy when he says that for him, the person that he quote unquote fears is Honorable Kennedy Japong, because of his unconventional approach to the way he engages in politics, right? I think when you look at his political temperament, right, he might give them a run for their money, even though I don't think he may not necessarily win. But it's, for me,
he says Dr. Bawumia is damaged goods. In the eyes of many discerning people in this country, can we call a spade a spade? How do you put him in the same scale with Ken, if he can be described as a damaged good?
Well, you see, the problem that the Vice, if we go back to 2016, Dr. Bawumia was essentially the face and the voice of the NPP's 2016 campaign, particularly in making the economic argument as to why the Mahama administration should be voted out of power. So again, for him, that is the biggest headache he faces going into 2024 when he wins the flag bearership, because he would have to reconcile all of that narrative, all of the assertions, and all of the projections of how the country would turn out with what Ghanaians have experienced over the last 7 years. And that, for me, would be the major difficulty, for him.
Okay, interesting. I was going to turn that question another way for you, but let's leave it here. Let me go to Suleimana. Suleimana, I don't know if you can do because civil society people like I was going to say Kofi Bentil, have said that it has to be Bawumia and none of these people. And that is a waste of time for the rest of them. Are you able to say something like that?
Well, it will be difficult for me to say a thing like that. I believe that in terms of personal belief in relation to brilliance, in relation to understanding around public policy issues, I would say yes, my bet will be on Dr. Bawumia in terms of assessing the 5 people in the race now. Of course, I will rate him over Ken, over Uswefrie Akuto, over Adainimo, and who else is the other person in it? Now, the challenge is, it's not just an MPP affair. The MPP thing is basically electing someone. The major thing is about the national elections. I think that is where, as a political party, I believe they are not just looking at who is brilliant, who understands the policy issues, who has oratory skills and all of that, but who is it that when we present to Ghanaians, Ghanaians would say, well, we can have confidence and trust in this person to lead this country and improve our living standards. And that is where I believe that among the contestants now within the NPP, Dr. Bawumia has the biggest problem. Because as things are now, if you are coming from the NPP, one of the things that you have to be able to do is to actually try to depart from the Akufo-Addo record in order to have public trust and public confidence. And at this stage, certainly the only person within the 5-member group who appeared to begin to sound that narrative is Ken Japan. And that is why I can understand Eduji when he says, look, the person that we think could even give us a run for our money, maybe Ken. It's not just about his rhetoric, unconventional politics. People say he's the Trump-like candidate and so on. But here is somebody who has started saying, look, me, I haven't been a minister before. I haven't been in cabinet before. I'm a businessman. I'm an MP. And look at how many people I've employed. So if I say I'll create jobs, look at even single-handedly, I'm employing this number of people. So I know what I'm talking about. Somebody who has, been criticizing the party when it comes to corruption. Recently, we saw the audio. Of course, he had to come to say, well, the context was different and all of that. Somebody who says, look, if I were to give you a record of the people in government who are involved in Galamsey, people will run away from this country. So in terms of the ability to let Ghanaians know that, yes, I'm an MPP member, but I don't represent the record over the last 7 years, that will be Ken. Certainly, Dr. Bawumia will have a difficulty in terms of policy credibility and the trust that people must have in a candidate in order to vote for him.
The point there is that the NPP differ with you and disagree with you on the basis that they believe they have a record which is superior, and that's Ukraine and then COVID aside, they would have done a lot more better. And even in the midst of that, there's a lot that they can account for to win an election. So they clearly don't need someone who wants to detach himself from the regime.
Well, Samson, I don't expect people in the NPP to publicly say that they don't have a record. I mean, that would mean they shouldn't even contest in the first place. Certainly, we have friends in the NPP. We have brothers and sisters in the NPP. Behind the scenes in private conversations, they confess and will tell you, look, things are bad, things are difficult. And not just even people in private conversations. Even in this contest, you've had people beginning to say, when I come, I will do this. In fact, the president himself says that, well, the next president will make things better, will make lives better. It was Dr. Bawumia during the campaign in 2016 who questioned, how come if it is about a global crisis, how did it escape Cote d'Ivoire? How did it escape Togo? How did it escape this country and only came to land here in Ghana? It is not for an MPP person to tell me about the exchange rate, what it was and what it is today. Samson, you remember, only in 2021, when we did the request for access to information with Minerals Commission, and they asked us to pay the equivalent of 1,000 cedis. You remember that in the stories that we produced, we basically said the Minerals Commission is requesting that we pay 5,800, which is the equivalent of $1,000 before they grant us the information that we had requested. Today, if it were today that we are doing that story, we will be saying that Minerals Commission is asking us to pay 12,000. And I'm talking about between 2021 and now, from 5,800 to 12,000. I don't think that it would take an MPP person to tell Ghanaians that, look, we have a record on this. And Dr. Bawumia, of course, was touted as the economic whiz kid, the person who knows about the economy, and so on. So I think that he'll be a tough sell, for the MPP.
He'll be a tough sell. My final question to you, and in the same frame as I asked you earlier, if Dr. Bawumia and Ken were presented to you to pick one for president of Ghana, who will you pick?
Well,
answer my question. Don't run away from it. Who will you pick?
Samson, that would be a tough one for me, because as I've told you, and I need to also really say that as vice president, given the nature of our constitution, one needs to acknowledge that there are certain limitations in terms of what the vice president can do and what he cannot do.
I haven't asked if you are supporting any one of them or anything like that. I'm just saying, you are a Ghanaian. If the two were presented for you to pick one, who will you pick?
Samson, maybe I would choose to abstain.
You choose to abstain. You won't pick any of them.
For now, I would abstain.
Okay. So Al-Haj Suleiman, like your name, says all the people who have been busted for corruption have been defended by Ken, with one of them being his campaign manager, Nanteti to Labianca, to PPA boss, to boss Alfred Obeng, to Maritime. All these people were fiercely defended by him. It is difficult for any reasonable person to see such a person as a sincere man. Is it a view you share?
I do, Samson, and beyond that, the record around Ahmed Swale and all the other, comments that he's made in the past, in 2016, 2020 elections, when we're doing the campaign language monitoring, in terms of monitoring indecent expressions that could incite violence and so on, Ken was constantly in the lead. Among the top 5 people that were often cited, Ken was in the lead. His media organizations, in Accra and in Kumasi, were among those that were perpetrating these kinds of narratives. And I don't think that if it was something that he wasn't endorsing, it would have been happening. So absolutely, he wouldn't be my preferred leader for this country. But as I've said, in terms of the masses, they look beyond these things and go with who is telling us the sweet things and is able to.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Suleiman Brahima. We'll take a break again and return to look at the question of the fight against Galamsey and also the pronouncements of late by significant persons, statesmen in the country, from Professor Adai, Dr. Arthur Kennedy, Professor Frimpong Boateng, Nyaho Tamaklo, among others. They speak about unbridled corruption superintended by Nana Akufo-Addo in his regime. Where do they get the facts to make these? We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Let me share some of your comments. And this one from Kenneth Jagbate says, Dr. Bawumia has a nice personality, but he's not competent. Ken has proven to me that he can take the country far with hard work and honesty. Really? Francis Adenimo, his time has passed. Dr. Efri Akoto, he is good, but he cannot carry the weight. Really? Omri Julio says, if we want to continue the good works of Nana, which saw him transform Ghana from poverty-stricken nation to a land of milk and honey, I dare say the South Korea of Africa, then Bawumia is no-brainer. Pastor Mensah says Bawumia could have been the right choice to lead this country. But looking at what Ken Ofori-Atta has done. Okay, so Sage Prolific says, I understand, Suleimana. This is like choosing between the devil and the deep blue sea. Then Things Ebi says, they are all not fit to rule this country. What have they been able to achieve for the country? They are coming to... Okay, so I think sometimes we can be a bit pragmatic in the things that we say. You can't say they have achieved nothing for the country. You can't say, for example, that President Akufo-Addo has done nothing for the country. I think that's wrong, and we should not learn to do that kind of politicking. EBT says, well, most of the materials donated for me are not what was needed at this urgent time. What the people needed most were building materials, but some were providing other things. But all the same, it is cool. The willingness to help without borders really came to bear. It was nice. Okay, so you are an affected person. Papi Golding says, before anything, thanks to everyone, and God bless all the sympathizers and empathizers. I think more needs to be done. That is, water can be moved from the town and build the town back for them. Moving those people out of that town would be a big mistake. Jacob Saware says, Commission of Inquiry must be set up on this Akosombo Dam spillage. We can't continue to add someone's negligence into this NPP bad administration. Those found guilty in connection with this harm should be punished severely. Then Sage Prolific again says there's been a commendable level of support, but no amount of relief item is enough in a disaster. I also hope actions beyond providing relief items are implemented, most especially by government, to resettle affected persons sleeping in schools. Right, thanks for those messages. You can send in some more. Now let's let you in on this. This is a special announcement on the Pop Chain 2023, originally scheduled for this Saturday, the 28th of October. Due to the statement issued by the GA Traditional Council in respect of the funeral of the late Queen Mother Nadede Omadru III, Gamaye, asking for a state of solemnity to prevail in the GA state until the 29th of October, and in according respect for the funeral of the late Queen Mother, Joy FM, Rotary Club of Accra Airport, Gold Coast Restaurant, and its partners would like to inform the general public that the Pop Chain Records Night, originally scheduled for this Saturday, today, 28th, has been postponed to the next Saturday. That's the 4th of November. All persons who have already bought tickets for the original event should hold on to their tickets, as they will be valid for use on the new dates. That's the 4th of November at the Gold Coast Restaurants. I sincerely apologize for any inconvenience caused and trust we can count on your support as we pay due respects for the funeral of the late Queen Mother. Thank you very much. And as always, Newsfile is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31, now we say 33 plus years. Duraplast, they are the producers of your PVC and HDPE pipes and water tank. Where Duraplast goes, water flows. DBS Industries, roofing, Papa Fie. My Way Insurance. Dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex tanks. It's strong. It's tough. Flamingo paints. Simply superior. Snit Seed. Self-employed enrollment drive. You don't have to be in government employment to be able to contribute to SNIT, or you don't have to have a white-collar job. That's what it is. So try and enroll yourself if you are self-employed. It's your future, so own it. Best Brain Publications. Tomorrow Education Today. Hubtel is everything you. And Doormasters. Thank you very much. We will now ask the question whether or not the Galamsey fight is being won. There are people who are not happy about what is going on. Justice William Atuguba says he can't believe that the entire state cannot fight this one thing that is killing all of us. Let's hear what some have had to say about this in the course of the week.
It will be on the 4th of December. And as we speak now, there are over 130 Galamsey cases pending in the courts in Ghana. 130. And the accused person involved in that case, there are over 800. 800. Over 800 who are facing prosecution.
All Ghanaians or foreigners?
Both foreigners and then Ghanaians. So in terms of prosecution, we are doing it. When it comes to the punishment, prior to 2019, people could be fined, they could be in prison up to 3 years. Now there was an amendment to the Minerals and Mining Act. Now the minimum is 15 for Ghanaians. Foreigners, minimum is 20 years up to 25. So now legal regime is well set out. But it's about getting evidence to prosecute.
I was not happy about how we were treated, especially when I heard on radio myself that some two NPP commentators or communicators were on a radio station in Accra saying all sorts of unsavory things about me. So I asked one of my friends to talk to that person, what was happening. And he said that they have instructions from the communication directorate that they should make life difficult for me, insult and do that kind of thing. So if you have people from your own party, and to be honest with you, all the criticisms, the insults about Galamsey and so on that I've had come from my own party. I gave documentary evidence, pictures, video, and several reports. And a lot of them on pen drive and so on. Somebody who has written a report. What evidence do you expect from me? Apart from words, documents, videos, and things, pictures. I'm not an investigating agent. That's not my job. I was a chairman of a committee, and I wrote a report. So you have to go around and see whether what I'm saying is not true. Galamsey is worse now than before. We have regional ministers, we have DCs, MPs, police people, customs and forestry commission people scattered all over Ghana. I did not see these things. If you go there, you get the evidence.
So that is Erastus Asaridonko's Poisoned for Gold. So over a long period, specialists have been predicting this. We have heard from medical doctors, we have heard Kwame Sapong-Essiedu. They've been on this platform in the last 2-3 years talking about the consequences of the Galamsey that we will see in the near future. It does look as if it has come. Everything else is getting polluted. And this is one of the results. So let me begin from, yes, Suleimana. If you followed Justice William Atuguba this week, he was so disappointed. He felt, what is this? A whole country, we can't win a fight against Galamsey?
I think that I share in the disappointment. And but if you understand why the Galamsey menace is still alive, then you wouldn't be surprised, because you would then realize that there hasn't been anything like a fight or an effort to end Galamsey. What has been happening basically has been rhetoric.
Oh, really?
And yes, and public speeches.
Is it that is not enough, or that there's been nothing? At least in
So
this regime, the media started a campaign, the regime took over, and then did the operation, hold the Galamsey thing, except that it's not being successful. Is that not a thing?
Well, I'm saying that, yes, the media started a campaign. The government took it up at the time in 2017. If you remember, and that was the first year in President Akufo-Addo's tenure as president, and a lot of fantastic, statements were made, including, in fact, proclaiming that he was prepared to put his presidency on the line if it meant that fighting the Galamsey menace would let him lose his presidency come the next elections. In fact, at that time, in July 2017, the president himself knew the problems when he said, and I quote him, "Rivers that have been with us for centuries are dry now. Forest areas which we should preserve for the sanctity of our lives are being devastated, all because of the phenomenon of Galamsey. And all kinds of people from all walks of our national lives are engaged in the exercise." And then he names them: security personnel, political leaders, business women, and Nananom, some chiefs, are all involved in this. So the president knew the devastating effects of Galamsey, and in fact, at that time, he knew that all these high-level personalities, politicians, security personnel, chiefs, and so on, were all involved in the menace. But unfortunately, along the line, for whatever reasons, the effort to combat the menace was perhaps, dropped. And by 2023, the president himself, as he said in January, was actually the one defending companies that were being accused and were being cited as companies involved in illegal mining and destroying our forest reserves, when he told the Catholic bishops that no, Akunta mining is not doing any illegal mining anywhere. So from a promise to put his presidency on the line, we got to a point where the president was actually the one now clearing companies that were devastating our forest reserves. And so when I say that, I am not surprised about where we are, because the commitment to fight the Galamsey menace has not actually been an actual commitment. That is what I mean. Yes, some efforts were made. If you go to somewhere around Ashaliboche, after Medina, you would see dozens of, these payloaders and other equipment that were being used in mining sites, all parked there, seized and parked there. About, maybe, if I'm not mistaken, close to 100 of them are still there. But something we do know, that as the Attorney General was saying, if you talk about prosecution, in 2022, when an analysis was done, it was discovered that only about 2 Chinese were in our prisons for involvement in illegal mining or Galamsey. But we do know that Ghanaians, basically bring these people, put them in our forest reserves, in our water bodies, to do all these things, and in the end, nothing happens to them. When we talk about prosecution, we are not talking about the persons who are really involved in the Galamsey. We are just talking about the laborers, the people who are hired and paid some minor, monies every day. You go meet them at the mining site, with mud and all those things. They are the ones we grab and go and prosecute. But these people don't have the monies to buy all the equipment. They don't have the money to buy the chamfans. And as the paramount chief of the Axim area, Awulai Atipurukusu, said in September this year, who is in charge of our harbors and the places where these things are cleared when they are coming in? If the government is indeed serious about dealing with the illegal mining phenomenon, there are particular things that when they are being brought in the country, they are not being brought by Anglo Gold or Newmont or all these big mining firms. They are being brought for illegal mining and small-scale mining activities. But how do they get cleared into the system? And how can the government then convince us that it is really fighting the menace. It is not about deploying military folks.
Tell me, have you lost hope that we will win, particularly that we have encountered a regime in which the fight has been heightened as never before, and yet this is a time that we have seen the worst of the devastation?
Well, so it is because it is not as you put it in terms of the fight has been, upscaled. It is actually the rhetoric around the fight that has been upscaled, but in terms of the actual fight, it has been downscaled. That is the reality. And we have no less a person than the minister in charge of the sector, Professor Kwabena Frimpong, who was made to chair an interministerial committee to deal with the phenomenon, presenting us with the facts, presenting us with what he knew as chairman. And today, what is the same government saying? The same government is saying that, look, whatever was presented is not evidential enough to do anything. And you travel across our constituencies, our districts, and community members will tell you, oh, the party chairman is involved in this. Oh, there is the constituency organizer who is doing this in this area. Oh, as for this Galamsey, the police people and the military people, when they come, basically, even when they are storming the forest, the people in the forest are called to be told that, oh, tomorrow they will be coming home. And then, that day they wouldn't be there. So at the end of the day, as the president himself said, security people are involved, politicians are involved. He's been told several times that people around him, people in Jubilee House, are involved. And this is not me saying. This is even including Professor Kwabena Frimpong. But, there's a deaf ear to it, and evidence that is presented is denied. Media is, our colleague Erastus Asaridonko has done a fantastic series of work around this, sometimes putting his life in danger.
Not sometimes, all the time.
All the time, actually.
And even simply sitting here and discussing it, some of us you have no idea what we go through.
Absolutely. And Samson, I don't think that if there is that genuine commitment to say, look, we want to end this menace, or at least minimize it completely as a country, and there is that political will to do it, we can do it. But the fact that it is still ongoing points to nothing but lack of political will, and the fact that persons who are involved, if you recall, there was a time that we were told, party hiensika, and this was a recorded conversation. Party no hiensika, and the source of the income was the Galamsey menace.
The CDD did its survey on funding of political party campaigns, where it talked about the fact that you needed about $100 million to be able to prosecute a successful campaign. And it found out how some of the money was coming from some of these kind of things.
Absolutely. And I believe that all our politicians, we do know. Let us put it on record that it is not the first time we are experiencing Galamsey. It's not as if it is under the Akufo-Addo regime alone that we are witnessing the phenomenon of Galamsey. It's always been there.
Okay.
But it is about the scale, how our rivers, major rivers, have all been polluted. At some point, Ghana Water Company was warning that, look, the way things are going, a time may come we may have to import water.
Right.
And yet, it's escalating.
Thank you. And before I come to the studio, Dr. Osai Kwapong, I don't know where you stand and how you process these things as they continue to happen. Sometimes I don't know whether I should give up. This is a comment. I'll read that and ask you a question. This is from Fred, and Fred says, this documentary by Erastus and many others, and Erastus has been on this for a while, for many years now. This documentary by Erastus and many others break my heart. Why are we allowing ourselves to be treated this way by Galamsey? And the whole state of Ghana, with the state machinery, as if he's quoting Justice Atuguba, with the state machinery, cannot fight this menace? I fail to believe that. Some of us think the death penalty should be on our statute books, and perhaps its scope expanded to include illegal miners. Look at how a few selfish people are destroying us and our future. Prof, you share in these sentiments. The question is, and I go back to that question, why is it that this is the regime where the fight has been the most heightened, and yet the devastation has been the worst?
And for me, it appears that I don't know why the state is struggling to win, quote unquote, to win this, or at least to minimize it, right? A year ago, I wrote about this in the Daily Graphic, where I said there are three issues for me that the state is trying to make sense of and reconcile, right? So there's the economics of it. Right or wrong, there are people who have strong incentives to engage, in Galamsey because of, the desire to earn a livelihood is their source of employment. At the same time, if you also look at the small scale mining sector in which Galamsey occurs, it is also critical to the state in terms of the revenue that accrues and even how much that sector as a whole employs. So there's the economics part of it. But now we are starting to realize, look, even as strong as these economic incentives are, it has given us major problems and major headaches. So we've tried to come up with some policy solutions to it. So if you go back all the way to when the small scale sector was regularized under the PNDC regime, right? It seems like the approach was, okay, we would regularize it, and then we would provide some monitoring, some oversight, regulations, etc., etc. That seems not working, right? So we now injected another component to that attempts at regularization and monitoring, which is, if you remember, the Kufuor administration had Operation Flash Out using, the security services. President John Mahama had a similar, interministerial thing against Galamsey, and then the most recent administration as well. As Mr. Suleimana said, the biggest thing that I think is continuing to undermine the policy approaches and dealing with the economic incentives is the politics. I thought it was a very brilliant idea that in fighting Galamsey, the administration came up with an alternative livelihood employment program so that if you could shift their attention from doing Galamsey to earn a living to other productive ventures, economic ventures, then you can deal with that menace.
No, but it was I think a double two-pronged. First, create alternative livelihood for those who are desiring to go there, and then most importantly, ensure responsible mining, small scale level.
Precisely. And yet some way, somehow, we still see this this menace going on with devastating effects. I mean, all you have to do is to follow Erasmus's work, and you just have to look at our water bodies and the way they are looking. The politics, I think, is what is making this even more challenging to fight. And when I wrote last year, I said to myself, Galamsey has to become a zero-sum game, which is no political winners and no political losers, right? That we all have to recognize that this thing has the potential to kill people without respect or regard for party colors. And at the same time, the stakeholders involved, I mean, you read stories, you hear stories of the faces, the voices, the people behind this. And you also realize that sometimes the very people that you are engaging to fight this menace are allegedly the people who are actually encouraging the practice to go on. And you ask yourself, at what point are we all going to, wake up and say that this thing can't go on forever? And as Suleimana said, to have the kind of real political will that says, even if this means I lose the next election, or even if this means I lose my seat, even if this means X happens to my party, I am willing to really fight this.
But the president has said that. He said he's put his presidency on the line. And some have done the analysis to show that in the last election, he suffered in certain areas because of this.
And parties must be willing to, and yes, maybe I'm speaking, theoretically, maybe I'm not a politician on the ground, and therefore, but that is the attitude and that is the approach that all the stakeholders must have, right? 2-4 once even alleged that, look, all of us gathered in this room, we know those who are, involved in this. So let's say if you are a chief in an area that it's happening, you should be willing to become the most unpopular chief. But how do you get all of these stakeholders to say, you know what, this thing would kill all of us? And for me, the political will, not even at the presidency, but the political will among all of the stakeholders who are involved in this is what hopefully it would take to end this menace.
Do you think, and that's my final question to you, do you think that the manner in which Ashawan was dealt with initially, where we even had the senior minister of all ministers come to suggest to us that we had nothing to benefit from prosecuting her, and so we had to ship her away, and that we were going to suffer somehow economically if we didn't do that. Comments like that, comments like what the president had to say not too long ago about his party chairman in the Ashanti region, Chairman Wuntumi, Bernard Ntwibu-Esiako, who was found, his company, he deals in gold, his company was found to be at the wrong place illegally. And it took the state, the minister and the Forestry Commission all telling this country that he was doing the wrong thing. And yet the president came to make a statement that has been said to be a defense of him. Do you think some of those pronouncements have done, some bad to the fight, and to what extent?
It's not even just done bad even to the fight, but it also does a lot of, damage to the president's public statements and commitment, right? I mean, real quick, the president, I agree with him when he always says that not until you are in trouble with the law, you would not understand and appreciate due process. And he tends to make that argument. And in principle, I agree with that. But in practice, it is also some of these things and what you say or do not say and the actions you take, even whilst you're waiting for due process to take its course, that is what shapes the public opinion and the public perceptions about one's commitment, to the fight against Galamsey. And I think it is on some of those things that I believe hurts the president and the administration when they talk about their commitment to the fight against Galamsey.
All right. And Nana Kumia, recently, particularly, I've taken, particular interest in the Ghana Bar Association. At the conference, annual conference, this was an important topic to them. The president was there, so they needed to tell the president right there. And then recently, they organized a press conference again. The Ghana Bar Association doesn't hold press conferences. Organized a press conference talking about this and corruption.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Samson. I'll just take a minute and a half to deal with some of the misconceptions that my brother here raised about the earlier topic. Now, it is very clear that the NDC fears Bawumia the most. It is very clear. From the way that they focus on him, they say that he's not a threat to them. Other people are threats to the NDC. But they keep focusing on undermining the credibility of Bawumia. In fact, their own leader, President John Mahama, is on record to have said that if the NPP wants to win the vote of Northerners, they should select Bawumia as the leader. President Mahama is on record to have said so. And he was speaking as Raleligo in the Northern region, and he said, our brother Aliyu Mahama was vice president for 8 years. I was vice president for 3.5 years. For almost 12 years, we've tasted vice presidency. It's no longer exciting. It's no longer what we want. They want to win here, they should put him in number 1 and let the two of us contest. So clearly, they have a phobia for Dr. Bawumia. And when you look at the records since Dr. Bawumia came into this prominence in the NPP, that region, the northern region, has turned NPP from a low of 4 seats out of 31 before 2012. Today, as we speak, the NPP has 16 seats in the northern region, that very region John Mahama was talking about. And the NDC has 15. So one of the strongholds of the NDC since 2012 has been broken. And I can tell you, President Mahama's statement is going to come through, that if we want to win the northern region and the other strongholds, we should bring Bawumia. And that's what that's what they are afraid of, because we don't have time. But my last point on this is that if you say Bawumia hasn't got credibility and that he's failed as an economic expert, you have brought President Mahama, who was rejected in 2016 as a sitting president and rejected again in 2020 as your flag bearer. Now, somebody who has been rejected because of failure as president, you have brought him back. And you are going to blame somebody who is vice president.
Thank you, Nana.
Let's wait and see. Now, this Galamsey, Samson, none of us is satisfied with the situation regarding Galamsey. And I suspect President Akufo-Addo will be the first to tell you that he's not satisfied. But clearly, there also has been successes. It's just that the successes are not being put out as much as the failures. And you know, this fight, as we heard one of our friends on the other side say, it didn't start today. President Kufuor had a major policy thrust against Galamsey. President Mahama had a major policy thrust against Galamsey. In fact, President Mahama told us that he deported thousands of Chinese people. It's on record to have said so. Deported thousands of Chinese people. President Akufo-Addo had a major policy thrust against Galamsey. So the political commitment has not been in much doubt. But of course, we are not happy with the results. But to say that President Akufo-Addo in particular hasn't shown commitment, it's a bit unfair, because the evidence clearly, this is a man who, one of the first things he did as president was to form the task force, mobilize the army to go in there and deal with the matter, set up a ministerial task force under Frimpong Boateng. He said that even if he lost the elections, he was going to put it on the line and he was going to fight against Galamsey. He's on record to have said so. And we saw the actions that he did, you know, in pursuit of that. Clearly, we need new thinking and new strategies, because all the efforts that we've been doing from President Kufuor, President Mahama, up to now, seem not to be working to our satisfaction. But to blame one leader is not fair, because we've all seen what President Akufo-Addo has been doing. And indeed, like you said, because of the fight that he put up against Galamsey in his first term, in the next election in 2020, we lost virtually all the Galamsey endemic areas. That accounts to the huge drop that we saw in the numbers of the parliamentary seats for the NPP and in the presidential vote. But you see, we don't even have the unity in fighting this. Look at the NDC. When they were in office, they were telling us how keen they were on fighting Galamsey, and we were told that they deported thousands of Chinese. But when they were in opposition, you saw them going around the Galamsey areas and telling the people that when you vote for us, we would give you land to do Galamsey. This is the man who will be appointed to
do Galamsey, regularize or Galamsey. It's the same thing you have been talking about, regularization.
Samson, when we are telling people who are doing Galamsey that when they vote for you, The people already doing the
You
Galamsey.
help them to regularize their business, which is what this government has sought to do.
No.
Your community
No.
money.
Play the video.
Your community
No,
money.
play the video. He didn't say the video that I'm talking about.
The community
If
money.
Can I finish? The one that the executive, you know what's his name?
Kweku Boahin.
Kweku Boahin. He said that, look, these people are worrying you. When we come, if you vote for us, this is the man who will be appointed.
Small-scale mining is
This
lawful.
is the man who will be in the office. And he will give you land so you can do Galamsey. President Mahama himself, he told Galamsey people, said that, look, when I come, the people who have been arrested, I will release them.
They are not in
You
yet.
see, but
At least they are not in yet. You are in control.
But
That's
I'm
the
saying
question.
that the unity that we need as a nation is even lacking. So when you go and tell people this, and the people then vote against the government, like they did, how are we going to have a united front in fighting Galamsey? But like I'm saying, none of us, and look, it's on record that a national women organizer of the NPP had her stuff destroyed. And you remember when the government had a policy that equipment found on the site should be destroyed on site. We're even having problems. So I'm saying that there have been clear...
That doesn't make an ounce of sense.
But you can see the commitment.
It wasn't the law.
So, but I'm not saying that it makes... I'm saying you can see the commitment. You may disagree with the method, but you will not disagree with the commitment. So if we give the impression that the political will is not there, that would be a bit unfair. But going forward, we need new thinking. Look, some people have suggested that every area in this country falls under the jurisdiction of a DCE or an MCE.
Right.
They are the closest.
That's the Imani approach.
Okay. That's the closest government structure to the ground. Make the district police commander, the district chief executive of MCE directly responsible, so that if evidence of Galamsey is found, immediately you know, and put it there as one of their KPI. That for me is new thinking. It has to be a national effort.
I've roasted DCs here in the studio just recently who have been overwhelmed, where police chiefs, where they live, their houses, the Galamsey is going on right there. And then they help to fight the Galamsey only for the police to turn the story around against them.
Against the DC?
Yes, against the people who are trying to fight it.
But, okay, so if you, the DC, you are made responsible, you shouldn't be allowed to use the police as an excuse. If the police twat you, that is the mandate you've been given. Make sure that you report the conduct to the highest level and to the nation. Because we can't keep doing it the way we've been doing it. We have a task force since Kufuor's time, to Mahama's time, Akufo-Addo's time. We are still not satisfied. It seems to be going on still. We need new thinking. But we also need a concerted effort. When you have a situation where people go and take political advantage like the NDC has done, it undermines the efforts to fight Galamsey. Going forward,
when you get an example, and I think sometimes internal party action or discipline will speak a lot to the people. When you have an example where the state itself, through the ministry, gave out
Ministry of Mines,
lands and forestry, gave out natural resources, gave out what's the name, Chairman Wuntumin's company. Can't you, in your internal processes, discipline such a person without waiting for a court to take action?
You know, in this country, mining in forest reserves is allowed. I am against it, but it's allowed. You see, so those are some of the things that we should be looking at going forward. Because when you say this is a forest reserve, it means that the people who own that land, they cannot go in and farm even cassava. It's a reserve. It's restricted. They can't go in and farm for yam. So how do you allow miners to go in when people can't go and farm cassava? So that's one of the things that I
when they go in there and the ministry indicts them, in written statements to the public, then the president is the one who takes the podium and tells us that, that kind of job is no more going on there. He's no more doing it.
Well, I think the president was asked, if what I saw is what is the actual, he was asked a direct question, that these people are mining in an area where it should be reserved. And he said that as far as he is concerned, there was no activity like that as he was speaking. That's what I heard. If there's any other thing, but that's what I heard. But you see, my conclusion is that the commitment has been shown at the political level, from Kufuor to Mahama to even though Mahama undermined his own commitment by going to tell people that when I come, I'll release people who have been jailed for Galamsey. But the resolve has been there. The political resolve has been there. But the results that we want has not been as we wanted. So for me, we should be looking at new thinking, new fresh thinking.
All right.
To fight this.
So this is a former DC who says, recently I saw a couple of low-bed trucks with chamfans heading northwards. These are things associated with Eastern, Western, and Ashanti regions. My enquiries indicate they are heading for the Black Volta. Are we really safe if it's true?
This is a DC.
A former DC. Al-Haj Suleiman again says, I think our courts have a share of the blame. See how they are frustrating the OSP in its attempt to prosecute Charles Bisu. A judge gave a restraining order against the arrest and investigation of Bisu, and has since then, in violation of the 7-day window, not giving any reason for his ruling. I am proposing that the OSP should set up a special unit on Galamsey and let all Ghanaians rally behind Kissie Jabeng in this fight. I have lost hope in all other institutions except the OSP. As an ecologist, I know at this pace we are headed for an ecological catastrophe. God save us. Mr. Redu says, if our security service cannot deal with this Galamsey problem, how safe can Ghanaians be when terrorists invade our country? Having in mind the appeal to the U.S. government on some settlement in Burkina Faso. Eduji.
Yep.
It's important that we are together collaborating, whether we are in opposition or we are in government, is it not?
I think that should be the ideal thing.
Yeah, so to have the President Mahama make those unfortunate comments and some of your party people also go down there and make those comments, now they feel we lost some seats because of this. So they don't want to have the kind of parliament we now have, which is difficult for them to have things. So they may also have the incentive to reduce their momentum on fighting it.
First of all, President John Dramani Mahama has never made any unfortunate comment.
He spoke about releasing people,
no,
giving a moratorium.
He provided the context. And he says that, listen, you have a government that decides to protect the powerful and decides to punish those downtrodden people, those young people who have been put before the prisons. How many of them have the capacity to import cyanide into this country? How many of them have the capacity to bring those machines, excavators? I mean, look at the cost of one excavator. Then you go and put a poor young man there when you know that there are faces behind this illegality. I mean, so it was within that context. Two, in this country, and today, the Akufo-Addo administration is engaged in what they claim is community mining. That community mining is another form of, Galamsey. Except that he and his cronies have monopolized this whole mining business. And that is what it is. So the statement by H.E. John Dramani Mahama cannot be unfortunate. But you see, if a man places his presidency on the line, the expectation is that, look, he's going to demonstrate firm commitment to it. The verdict out there is that Mr. Akufo-Addo has failed as far as the fight against Galamsey is concerned. And you see, even what is even more problematic, shameful, is this whole business of trying to whitewash the person who had provided the lead in this whole fight, the person of Professor Frimpong Boateng. I mean, the Attorney General is...
Being whitewashed.
Who?
You say he's being whitewashed?
No. I mean, he is rather, you are whitewashing the effect of the problem and rather blaming the respected heart surgeon. Look at the case of Professor Frimpong Boateng and the 36-page report that he provided all of us. If you read the Attorney General's response to that letter, invariably it's like to tell us that all the pictures that we have seen of the destruction are things that were imported from Azerbaijan. Those pictures were taken from Azerbaijan. It's like it's not happening here in Ghana. You invite law enforcement officers, and the principal law enforcement officer, the Attorney General, is telling us that, look, I have not found the nature of evidence requiring prosecution. Is the AG telling us that the CID, who did the investigation, have done a poor job? As we speak, your own Erastus Asaridonko, was he ever invited by the police to give them further information relative to the information that he has put out? None. Look, there's
in fact, Erastus, in the course of all of these things, actually got threatened by Kenneth Japon, who asked that if he had the opportunity, he will whip him up. And we took a report to the police.
Absolutely nothing.
They said we're going to do something. They have done zero in almost 1 year.
And this one, Nana Kumia says, let's share responsibility. It cannot be. It is the lack of commitment. And you see, there's an NPP professor.
Commitment by the police.
Please. There's an NPP professor, Professor Kwam. He was specifically named by Professor Frimpong Boateng. This is a man appointed by President Akufo-Addo on the Minerals Commission. It turned out that he sold a concession to an NPP appointee of President Akufo-Addo in the person of Kwabena Senchire. Kwabena Senchire reported him to the OSP and the CID about this illegality. The Attorney General says he's not aware of these events. In fact, Kwabena Senchire actually granted an interview to Sompa FM. I'll give you the video. And he narrates everything with this Professor Kwam, an appointee of Mr. Akufo-Addo. And if all of these things are put together, and the devastating effect being the fact that today, our mothers are giving birth to children without proper development of vital organs of them, you say the president, it is not fair to say he had not demonstrated commitment to this fight. Nana, we cannot downplay this effect because
Professor Kwam has been on this platform and denied these things.
Look, in fact, and
denied the allegations.
Look, and let me tell you, Kwabena Senchire in the 8-minute video said that he even recorded him because he actually trapped him until he came to Rantry Park. What Professor Kwam didn't know was that he was recording him. Samson, I'll give you the audio and the video so you can play it.
When somebody was also recorded, one DC was recorded about how they could benefit from this Galamsey thing, and he was caught. He was disciplined. He lost his job.
And
right?
I'm saying that in this case, Professor Kwam was appointed to the Minerals Commission by the president himself. With this, and this allegation is not coming from an NDC person.
So
this is another.
You're saying what? You're saying that when the man denies these allegations and Professor Frimpong Boateng's report is placed before the Attorney General for examination,
sure.
He should not stop there.
No.
He should do further work.
And you see, the Professor
He says the police did their investigations and the investigation also revealed nothing.
No, but how can the police say they investigated this matter without even calling your own colleague Erastus?
So do you blame the police or the Attorney General?
Both. Because in the Cecilia Dapa matter, when the Attorney General, upon review, found that there were loopholes, the Attorney General recommended further investigation. If the AG was minded that, in fairness, pursuant to his powers under Article 88, mindful of getting people prosecuted, he would have asked for further investigation. But the AG took the police report, whatever it is, and now decided to say that, look, from Pombratin, you never provided us anything.
On the matter of the excavators, where the AG saw that there was some
the journalist
that can be used for prosecution, he recommended that should go on.
No, but you see, in the case of Setmante, when did this happen? 2019. The AG today is recommending that the young man should be prosecuted. After how many years? The inaction is so obvious. And the point that I'm making is that, look, if you pick government totality, their commitment toward this fight against Galamsey, it is nothing, it is shambolic. And persons like Professor...
They are telling you, we have witnessed the heaviest number of prosecutions in this fight so far. Can't you, at a point, be candid about something that, truth be told, this is the one time that the Galamsey fight has been elevated to a point where we all can physically, as it were, testify. Except that, like I keep saying, whilst it has been heightened the most,
what's the nature of the
devastation is worse.
What's the nature of the testimony? That the president did not, in front of clergymen, after his own Minerals Commission had made adverse findings against Akonta Mining, for him to clear. Now, when the Minerals Commission, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, makes adverse findings, and then the president meets clergymen in Kufuridia, and I'll tell them that, as far as I'm concerned, this man has not done anything wrong. The net effect is that the president is communicating to his appointees that, look, how come that you said the man has done something?
How about the national...
Consistent with the president's dubious distinction as a clearing agent. And so you cannot take those matters away from where things are. And if you talk about testimony, the environment, the pictures that you are even showing, is the testimony. How is this the evidence of a man who had demonstrated or said that I want to put my presidency on the line?
You're a lawyer. You're a very good one at that.
Absolutely.
You are head of your legal team at the NDC. When you see pictures like this and you are going to have to mount prosecution, what is the use of the pictures to a prosecution that you must have evidence that lead conclusively and leaves not a scintilla of a doubt? That's criminal prosecution. You must prove beyond all reasonable doubt that this gulf here was caused by a Simesi. Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
You see, you are right on the principle. What you have not tried to distinct, the distinction is blurred, is that, you see, if I make a call right now to you that this is a murder scene, and as an investigator you come, you see a dead body, you see blooded knife and others, what it does is that it provides you a lead to look for the person. But you cannot tell me upon visiting the murder scene and say, no, when I came, I didn't see anybody, so no crime was committed.
So who do you indict? Because they say the police did an investigation, and the investigation reveals nothing.
Why are you trying to take the AG out of this conversation? You cannot blame the police and leave the attorney general. Because I've given you a scenario. When the police didn't do a good job, hold on. When the police didn't do a good job,
you have stated that.
The AG had the benefit of saying, go further into this matter.
You're right about
because
that.
I want to achieve conviction.
You're right about that. Okay. Doc and Sule, I need you to give me just a minute or two of your final commentary, conclusions as to what we should do. Unfortunately, we can't deal with the question of the corruption matter. We should be able to table it for next week's discussion.
Well, Samson, just like Nana Kumia said, we need some new thinking on how we approach this. And the fact that, for example, if you bring the smallest unit of government that is closest to Galamsey and empower them to fight it, then hopefully you can make some headway.
Yeah, new thinking. What are you thinking about? For example, Professor Frimpong Boateng's report. Do you feel strongly that the AG should have done better than simply say, there's nothing in it, it's empty?
Yes. I mean, Exactly, right? Probe it further, figure out, and who knows, maybe from what he studied, he doesn't think there's more. But I always say that, in Ghana, we always, and I'm not downplaying the importance of the law, but we always err on the legal test. And if something doesn't pass the legal test, then it's okay. But we have to keep thinking about what I call the appearance test. And for me, the appearance test is where the politics comes in.
Okay.
How do we then use political and administrative tools at our disposal to deal with some of these issues?
Thank you very much, Dr. Sakwapon. Yes, Suleimana.
Samson, I don't know what Nana means by new thinking, but I think what we need to deal with this matter is genuine commitment, where a leader says, this is bad, I'm going to fight it, and fights it all out regardless of who is involved. I agree with Nana that we also need to begin to build consensus, bipartisan consensus on matters of significant national interest, such as this one. Because if you have a situation where one side is seeking to exploit whatever fight is ongoing, and the other side says, look, I'm going to fight it down the consequences, we will never get to where we want to get to. So that bipartisan consensus building on major national issues is something that we have to deal with. And I believe that these are the things that we have to do to achieve the results that we want to achieve to prevent the devastation that is happening.
Right. And thanks to Erastus Asare-Donko for continuing in this direction. We pray for a lot more protection for you. Erastus Asare-Donko has just been decorated just 2 weeks ago, right? With the winner of the PVA ANSA award for the Emmys. And today it's supposed to be for, is it the GJA one is coming up, and many people are saying that
my friend had put something. It's Erastus Asare-Donko time to be journalist of the year.
Right, let's see how that one goes. And guys like Manasseh Azure too, this week he was also named the best investigative journalist in Africa, the whole of Africa. Nana, I think we have just some 30 seconds. Yes.
Like I said, when you try to reduce the fight against Galamsey along partisan lines, we will fail and fail again. The NDC should come on board. Don't go and incite people against government using Galamsey. When you do that, you weaken the resolve and undermine the resolve of government to fight Galamsey. We were talking about this from Pomboating thing. They say there's evidence in the report. I have seen many parts of the report. You show the footage of him saying communicators were organized to go and attack him. The minister in charge of that has said it's a blatant lie. That there's a meeting at Dodowa where I was invited myself, and he showed evidence. And then how can that meeting be a meeting organized to go and attack from Pomboating?
All right.
It says Gabriel Shidakun called him. Gabriel Shidakun says, I had a client who had made a complaint.
Well, Gabi has sued for defamation.
So let's allow them.
Let's see how.
So I'm saying that.
Senior, is it not curious? I think
our time is up.
And the way Samson was interrogating.
Is it not curious that?
You let me finish.
Oh yes.
Why?
Oh yes. If you look at the fact that President Akufo-Addo received the Frimpong Boateng report as early as 2021, never did anything. He sat on it until the man granted an interview. Before the man said, now, police here, they come and investigate. The 2 years that the president was sitting on the report, what happened?
Okay, so it's been investigated now.
All right.
And something, you know our common faculty, the University of Ghana School of Law. Under the leadership of Dean Atiguba, the facility that is putting up, Anakomia.
Yes, so
you want bipartisan
support? Bipartisan. This week is an all alumni homecoming celebration at the University of Ghana
get an
School of Law, and very interesting stuff, including the discussion of entrenching consensus on legitimacy, lessons from the Consultative Assembly for Reforms of the 1992 Constitution, to be delivered by His Lordship Justice Stephen Alan Brobe and His Lordship Justice J.C. Money. I will be moderating that. I invite all of you to show up. And tomorrow, God willing, on the law, my favorite show. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., join me on the law. We are looking at the question of occupiers' liability, the legal effect of the disclaimers you see on premises. You go to a restaurant, you go to a hotel, you are parking your car, and then you see there that, yes, you are parking it there, but when it's damaged or anything happens to it, we are not responsible. We are going to find out whether it has any legal effect or not.
This old man who is 93 years today, C.K. Uloje, I beg you, I want to wish him a happy birthday.
Thank
93
you.
years.
Thank you very much. That will be it for Newsfile. Today, my guests have been, and I'm hoping that we can maintain at least Sule and Prof for next week, so that we discuss the issue of the corruption that is said to be unbridled at this time. My guests have been Godwin Eduji Temeklo, who is Legal and Communications Team member, National Democratic Congress. He's in charge of the legal affairs. Anna Akomia is member, the New Patriotic Party's communication, and speaks for Dr. Bawumia's campaign as well. Dr. John Osai Kwapong is Democracy and Development Fellow, CDD Ghana, the Afrobarometer man, and research methods, the thing I fear. Suleiman Ibrahima is Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. And they too were celebrated in the US just past week. Yes, the Media Foundation for West Africa's fourth estate, the new way of doing journalism. They were celebrated with a prestigious award from the United States of America. Samuel Ekudjeto Ablakwa, MP for Northong, joined us earlier. Seji Saji, Deputy Director General, NADMO, also joined us. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini. Have a good afternoon.